I'd like to declare a call to order this meeting of District 116 for Tuesday, September 5th, 2017. This is our study session meeting. Roll call, please.
Member Carter.
Here.
Member Hall.
Here.
Member Patton.
Here.
Member Pulaski.
Here.
Member Fisher is here. Vice President Rollins-Gay.
Here.
And President Demmett.
Here. Do we have any additions, corrections, or modifications to this evening's agenda?
No modifications, just a quick point of clarification, and that is we are not being broadcast live on UPTV tonight because the Labor Day weekend has pushed the City Council meeting back to tonight, and for some reason they preempt us.
Yeah.
But we will be rebroadcast 3 times during the week, including Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon. So please catch us then, and as always on the district YouTube channel.
Yeah, which is weird.
All right. Do we have any citizens that wish to address the board this evening? Give everybody a chance to fill out the goldenrod sheet and give it to our recording secretary if you do wish to speak to us. I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to thank Brittany Williams for running the cameras for us this evening so that eventually we'll be able to be seen. Anyone wish to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. We have no call for executive session tonight. We do need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We have several administrative briefings, reports, and commendations this evening. So we'll start with the 6-day enrollment report. Do we turn it directly over to Dr. Bynum? Or
Yep.
Okay. Sam, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. So I have some good news for us as our enrollment numbers are up. If you take a look at the 6-day enrollment form, overall, looking at K through 5, we have an additional 52 students this year. And then through the secondary, we have about 80 students. So if you look at each of the elementary grades, you see that Leal and Dr. Williams both have a few students at Leal less than last year, but a lot less at Dr. Williams. As I know we had looked at in previous years, really trying to work with the building administrative staff and figuring out how we could address the issues of overcrowding. And so this year we looked at transitioning some of those families to both Thomas Paine and Yankee Ridge. And so that's provided a more balanced classrooms across the district, but also a little bit more balanced numbers for the schools overall. All right. And so the second sheet just shows you a little bit about the classroom count. We're still working through some self-adjustments, but overall these are the numbers going into the 6th day of enrollment.
Any questions for Dr. Bynum?
So just to clarify what you said, so all the drop at Dr. Williams, which is pushing 500 at the end of last year, was totally voluntary families who voluntarily, you know.
Well, what we looked at is where the class sizes were and what we had more or less a soft cap. And so what we tried to do was give families the opportunity to transition to either Thomas Paine or Yankee Ridge as an option to ensure that we had appropriate sized classes, but also enough space to move around in the building as well.
Okay, and they took us up on that offer.
I know from a personal call I took that it wasn't all voluntary. One family was not happy, but they're very happy now.
Oh, okay.
And so I know you've worked out any issues that there might have been arising with families that were
Yeah, I would say
unawares a little bit about it's a disorganized family, and so they were. We did everything we could to inform families of the arrangement, but not everybody reads everything that they're provided. But
Got
this
that.
family is happy now. I'm well aware of the fact.
yeah.
Okay.
We had a couple of families that reached out just because they needed more clarification. They weren't as familiar with the schools and what resources the school might have available. But in the end, like Mr. DeVitt was saying, many of the families are very pleased with the outcomes or the final outcomes.
Great, okay.
I just had
Thank
sorry, if you want to go next, Paul, you can. I just had a quick question. Did you have to add any more classes per grade level to get the numbers down, or how did that work out?
No, we didn't add any additional classes or anything like that. We
Okay.
just looked at where the numbers were and how we could adjust as needed to ensure that, the class sizes were under where they would need to be, and, we were able to stay within that soft cap threshold.
Okay, thank you.
I see there's a nice about 5% bump at Wiley. Was that mostly just due to the increased attendance in the existing attendance areas, or transfers, or?
I think in some regards it's due to maybe just some transitional movement in the neighborhood, but also thinking about, we were very thoughtful during the petitioning process to make sure that we be able to accommodate space from other schools.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? It's a great report. Oh, sir, go ahead.
Just real quick, on the families that opted to go to Thomas Paine or Yankee Ridge, does that become a transportation issue for them? Are they accommodated in some way by the district?
Well, they're accommodated in transportation, and the families that primarily looked at Thomas Paine were within the walking distance to attend that particular school.
I got a question.
Yes, Benita?
Is there a way that we could get the demographics on the ratio as far as the African American and the white and the Hispanic kids in the movement from Dr. Williams to Yankee Ridge?
Yes.
Was that proportionate, or how
Was
was
it-
that?
Well, I wouldn't say that it was proportionate in terms of the overall number of students, but I would be glad to put that together and either bring it to our next board meeting or send it so everyone.
If it is, I think that's great. Great more in those two schools.
Well, what I would say, to try and better clarify what I think you mean by proportionate, initially I thought you meant, was there a equal distribution of racially identifiable groups that moved from Dr. Williams? And what I would say is, I don't know if it was proportional, but I would say that overall, both Thomas Paine and Yankee Ridge would have a more broader or be more racially diverse.
Okay. Other questions? Thanks. Great report. It's good to see our enrollment growing. Our next report is our fall staffing report.
Thank you, Don.
Closely connected with our fall student report, I would assume.
Thank you very much. Let me start by reading a quote from the State of Racial Diversity in the Educator Workforce Report by the Department of Education in 2016. Improving teacher diversity can help all students. Teachers of color are positive role models for all students in breaking down negative stereotypes and preparing students to live and work in a multiracial society. A more diverse teacher workforce can also supplement training, culturally sensitive teaching practices most effective with today's student populations. That certainly matches the sentiment we have when we look at hiring. So let's dig into our numbers a little bit. Looking at specifically at our hires for this school year, it says hiring for the 2017-2018 school year. When we look at all new employees hired last year for 2016-17, we hired 89 new employees, and this year, for this school year we're in now, we've hired 85. So it was a robust year for hiring, but not our highest year in terms of numbers. You heard me say this spring we had a deep pool of candidates for our administrative positions. That held true for a lot of our teaching positions as well, and certainly for other positions such as teaching assistants. For our teaching positions, such as elementary regular education teaching positions, and many of the regular education teaching positions at secondary, especially, we had large candidate pools. So good year for hiring. When we look at who we hired, our new teachers, in that section, our new teacher hires this year, 30% were teachers of color. Over the past 5 years, we've averaged 23% teachers of color hired. So our takeaway here is this is steady progress. For the first time in recent history, that 30% is true across elementary, middle, and high schools for all teachers hired. For a while there, our elementary schools had a slightly larger number, in part due to the bilingual program growing, and many of the teachers hired were Latino teachers. I want to point out especially kudos to our secondary administrators, their recruiting teams, their interview teams, because there was a significant gain at UMS and UHS. Over the past 4 years, they had a combined average of just 13% teachers of color hired. Now this year, 30%. So kudos to them. That's significant progress. And I think this is a good point for me to point out that although I'm the one reporting this to you, recruitment, retention, hiring our wonderful teachers is a huge team effort. Let me give a shout out of thanks to a few people. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but Dr. Samuel Bindum, Todd Taylor, Lupe Riccone, Dr. Joseph Wiemelt, Jacinda Cromer, Natalie Bretz, all at the district office. But our most important people that I want to thank for recruiting and retention and hiring are our principals, the faculty, and the staff, those who are in our schools who've been working to make their schools more equitable by recruiting and hiring excellent teachers of color and staff of color. Because of our racial equity learning and work with professional development this year, I've heard from many, many administrators, faculty members, and staff members about the urgency that they're now feeling in terms of having the adults in their building better reflect the racial makeup of the students we serve, which is one of the excellent outcomes, and we're only 1 year into that work. So moving into the next section, the snapshot of the district, the faculty administrators for this year, the 2017-2018 school year. So right now, this is what it looks like when you look at all faculty and administrators. 19% of our current teachers, other faculty members, or administrators are employees of color. And again, a message of steady progress. This percentage has risen steadily since the 2012-2013 school year, when 13% of our teachers, other faculty members, and administrators were employees of color. Now that does contrast to when we look at all of our employees, including our part-time employees. 28% of our total school district employees are employees of color, and that is up from 21% in 2012-2013. So that steady progress is good news, but there's much work for us still to do. So when you look at the student section here, our Urbana School District students, according to the 2015-2016 Illinois report card, 64% of our students are students of color. That number's held fairly steady for a number of years. In order to better serve all our students, we want to recruit and retain teachers, other faculty members, administrators, and staff of color. We've made steady progress with more racial diversity among our employees, but throughout the district, there is more urgency than ever to make substantial progress more quickly toward a faculty, administration, and staff that better reflects our students. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, questions for Catherine?
Great job. I'm very impressed.
Kudos to a large team effort.
Peggy?
Kathy, do you
Yeah.
know offhand how that, the 30% of new hires, how that breaks down by gender, male, female, and also by race? I mean, Latina versus African American.
Yeah, I can certainly get that for you, Peggy.
Yeah, I think that would be
absolutely. I
useful.
can get that for the board.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And that was the new employees that you were particularly looking at, new teachers?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gender and race, how many are
Okay.
African American versus Latino.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we do, I mean, you mentioned Latino and African American. We also have in that group Asian American teachers that were hired, as well as I don't remember if it's represented here, but certainly in our district, American Indian,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Asian, and Pacific Islanders. So
yeah, so all of those,
Mhm.
that would be great to know.
yeah, glad to.
That's what I noticed at new teacher.
Orientation.
I represent the board at the new teacher meeting,
Uh-huh.
and the room was very colorful compared to our normal staff meetings. So, all staff meetings, and very diverse. Not. I'm glad you mentioned we need to go beyond just Latino and African American.
Yeah,
We need to
that's
talk about a wide variety,
Uh-huh.
as is our student makeup.
It's wonderful.
Other questions?
Were any of them returning Urbana alumni?
Yeah, one.
Really?
Only one this time.
Wow.
Usually it's
Yeah.
1, 2, or 3. Usually, but this year it was one. And I don't, it was.
The names escaped
was
me.
its name escapes me, but it was. I
Tammy.
have the sense it was a
Yeah,
mid-career.
it was Tammy Motley, who, Tammy, are you in the room back there? Come out and wave. Tammy Motley's our counselor at Urbana High School, who's also an Urbana High School graduate.
Good.
She also works here at Adult Education in the evenings as a student counselor. So, sorry, we were just talking about you. Figured you might as well wave.
Yeah.
And then we also had another Urbana graduate in the group of total new hires, and she's also in the room too. Yeah, sorry. Christina Kale Lewandowski, who is the principal of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School,
That's right.
attended Urbana schools for 1 year. It happened to be her senior year. So we're going to count her as an Urbana High School graduate as well.
All right. Excellent. Any other questions? Thanks. Thanks, Kate. Next is our school funding update. We had action finally.
We had action.
Action, yeah.
Okay. So I provided you with a one-pager. I tried to summarize briefly the highlights or the key points of what is now called SB 1947, or as many people like to point out, SB 1, and then in small letters 947 afterwards. That's literally the way it's been presented and written all over, including the ISB website. Senate Bill 1 obviously was the piece of legislation that had been worked on for the last 3 years, incredibly well researched and vetted by both parties. And eventually, it became the basis of the compromise bill that was signed by the governor on October. That'd be Halloween. It's scary, but not that scary. Oh. Okay. August 31st, 2017, Governor Rauner signed SB 1947, which is the compromise bill. It does mark a historic day for school funding, where we're taking huge steps towards equity, and we're on a path to adequacy. The funding formula is based on an evidence-based model that was created over the past 3 years. The equity portions, as I said, are all centered around the premise of Senate Bill 1, and that we've been told that the Senate Bill 1 models that the State Board of Education put out over the last month or so are fairly accurate in terms of the numbers. And so when I'm talking about some of the numbers tonight, that's what I'm basing it on. Carol and Todd and I sat in a webinar this afternoon over lunch that was riveting, if not long. And the compromises I want to highlight involve 4 main areas. I'm going to talk about them very briefly because really I don't see them having a huge impact on Urbana. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about them, but I don't see them as having a huge impact. The first one is mandate relief. It eases state rules about physical education. It removes restrictions on contracting with commercial driving schools to provide driver's education training. And then it also removes requirements that the entire General Assembly vote on certain waivers that school districts ask for mandate relief. And instead, they have a council of 4 of the leaders of the Senate and the General Assembly who will decide whether those waivers are granted or not. It also involves tax credit scholarships. You might have seen some statements that I made in the paper. I do believe that this is a slippery slope towards vouchers for private school education, but in this case, just to clarify, it does not provide public money towards private schools, but it does provide a significant tax credit to anyone making individual or corporate donations to private school scholarships. It does come with some strings attached, and it'll be very interesting to see how those play out. Any student who is the beneficiary of one of these private school scholarships will have to take the state mandated assessments. So any student who is taking the scholarship money will be required to take either the PARCC or the SAT. I'm not sure how that will play out when in reality, but that's what's in the law. The Chicago tax levy, again, not a big impact on Urbana or Urbana taxpayers, but it does authorize an additional 0.567% levy in the Chicago Public School District to help pay off the debt for the Chicago teachers' pensions. You may or may not know that the Chicago tax rate for public education is one of the lowest in the state, but in part that's because they're on a different funding structure than the rest of the state for a lot of reasons. And this Senate Bill 1947 does a good job of bringing some equity to the funding structure for Chicago public schools as well, which is an important aspect when you're looking at statewide support for public education. Finally, property tax relief. It creates 2 systems to address high property taxes in communities that either have the highest tax rates or have districts that are funded at or above 110% adequacy. Urbana does not come even close to fitting into either one of those categories at this time, and so I won't really go into any detail unless you want me to, but that percent adequacy number right now, we're at 76% adequacy, and I don't foresee that we would be going up much from that in the next several years. So that 110% threshold is actually fairly rare, at least in our history. So what does SB 1947 mean for Urbana School District? Well, we are currently at 76% adequacy with our current funding, which places us in a Tier 2 funding structure. That means we're not getting the most benefit of the equity piece, but it does mean that we're getting some. Current models indicate that we would see an increase in our GSA of around $160,000 over last year's state revenues. And that's, I want to clarify that that's not over last year's general state aid numbers, because all of the state revenues have been kind of compiled into one general state aid number. So they've taken some of the separate categories and put them all under general state aid. So that's not $160,000 more than last year's state revenues, or last year's general state aid, but it's more. It's $160,000 more than last year's state revenues. And I just want to clarify that because that was a great point of, shall I say, grist for the journalistic mill in regard to spinning numbers in ways that would benefit one's political affiliation. And by clarifying that, it makes it easier to understand that, yeah, it's, for us, it's $160,000. There are also 27 core instructional elements that are incorporated into the evidence-based formula. These include, just for example, class size, professional development, librarians and library aides, and other things. I provided a 2-page chart that was taken from the 70-some page PowerPoint from today's webinar. And that 2-page chart just shows you what those 27 elements are. And it also tells you what some of the core essential elements will add in terms of revenues. And so the one thing you'll notice is class size does have a pretty big factor in this. It is elements 1, 2, and 3, and it's even broken down into subcategories A and B for low-income students at grades 1 through 3 and low-income students at grades 4 through 12. You'll notice that the class size are much lower than what's in our current CBA. They are 15, 20, 22, 20, and 25, respectively, for kindergarten, grades 1 through 3 low income, grades 1 through 3, grades 4 through 12 low income, and grades 4 through 12. If a school district hits those targets, each student counts as one student. If when calculating the GSA formula, if a school district does not hit those targets, each student counts as 0.5 students. So it is a pretty major incentive to aim for those targets. Now, some of those targets are within our reach. Some of them, it would take additional classroom space and quite a few more teachers. Unfortunately, the models that we have seen are not interactive in that we can't yet go in and do some mathematical projections. I'm sure that there will be all kinds of people who will be willing to sell that service to us very soon, but I'm also confident that we will have partners who will be able to provide it for us at a reasonable rate. But to say, okay, what does it look like? What do we have to get to in order to make a cost-benefit analysis of reducing our class sizes? How much will it increase our general state aid versus how much more will we have to spend on additional classrooms, additional square footage, and additional teachers? But that's a very interesting concept. And you can say, where did these numbers come from? Well, the whole point of this, the core instructional elements, is these are evidence-based. And so they are in the research as saying these are the areas where you have most evidence for having a positive student outcome. And you do have to get down pretty low for class size for an effect to show up. So that's that. I will stop talking and take any questions that you might have.
I was wondering if this had any effect on the mandated categoricals and the state's deficit on that count.
It has not. It does not have any clear effect on mandated categoricals. The state has told us that they will catch up eventually. We did get a payment in August for mandated categoricals from last fiscal year, and that actually would have extended our number of days that we could have remained open beyond that 96-day mark that was published in the News Gazette. But we still do not know when we will get caught up on those mandated categoricals. And Carol, do you know the number that we're at right now of how much they owe us for mandated categoricals? It's still over 1.6.
They owe us over $6 million in total, but for mandated categoricals, it was probably, I think, $729,000.
Okay, so $729,000
That
left.
popped into my head.
Mandated categoricals. $6 million total for those of you at home who didn't catch that.
So, thanks for sharing the information about the core elements, because I knew class size was part of it, and it's really encouraging to see how much they incorporated what we know from research. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, the districts that are below 100% adequacy are not going to get new dollars until the state has more dollars to apply to public education, which they don't have. So are you saying if we don't meet these lower class targets, then we only get reimbursed for a half? We won't get our full general state aid? No, okay.
No.
When you say a 0.5, a student, it counts as 0.5.
So yes, let me clarify. That's a great question, and it's very much worth a little bit of time for clarification. What we've been told many times over is that this immediately, we are getting at a bare minimum a hold harmless of what our general state aid and other state revenues were for last year. And then they will calculate in the evidence-based model and determine with the adequacy target and the evidence-based model how much our total allocation is. What they have said is no district will be a loser, or no district, no red districts was a hashtag for a while. There will be no districts that lose money under this model. Moving forward, what they're saying is they will take next year and they'll say you will be guaranteed next year plus whatever's in the evidence-based calculations and your adequacy targets. And so over time, you might have districts that eventually drop below this year's current level if they have a major reduction in student population. But you also will have districts that will go well beyond the current student level if they have an increase or if they hit more of these evidence-based targets.
So what does practically it mean if we don't hit the targets that our students count as 0.5? What does that mean in practical funding terms? You know, I mean,
So I'm looking at Carol and Todd, and it's like,
maybe it's not known yet, or?
Yeah.
Well, I
Okay.
think what we can say is that that model was used to determine the estimate for this
Yeah.
year that
Right.
they're giving us, and we got $163,000 more
Okay.
based on that. So we're still coming out ahead, even with the class sizes that we currently have.
Even with,
yeah.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I guess one way to look at it, and I should have brought in this other slide from the presentation, but it was a little goofy, and it, to be honest with you, it confused me, and so I
Yeah.
wasn't sure that the nice, pretty graphics would do anything for anyone else, because if they confused me, I wasn't confident in my ability to explain them to other people. But now that you say that, I'm kind of getting it.
Yeah.
Basically, if you can think of where we were as a certain level, and our adequacy target is above that level, the evidence-based formula fills in.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. You also
Okay.
said that we needed to have new money. Well, there is $350 million of new money coming into this model. And my understanding is that $350 million was part of the allocation that was part of SB 1947.
Okay.
And so we're set for this year.
Okay.
Moving forward, it's all of us
Yeah.
holding all of them in Springfield accountable for continuing to fund public education well.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? What I'm basically hearing is, hang on and we'll find out.
That was the overwhelming sentiment of everyone on this webinar today, including the people who were asking questions at the end. It was very clear that it was unclear. But like I said, I'm more confident, I'm more pleased than ever about where we are in the state of Illinois when it comes to equitable school funding. So that's one reason for optimism.
All right, moving on. We are ready. We have no policy reviews tonight. We have 2 public hearings. The only time that we use the gavel. I'd like to open the first public hearing on our 2017-2018 budget. Anyone wish to address the board regarding our 2017-18 budget? This is a requirement that we hold this public hearing. Seeing none, close the public hearing. Next, we need to open a public hearing on the adult education budget for the year 2017-18. Anyone wish to open that public hearing? I'm required to bang the gavel. I know it's crazy.
We appreciate that.
Anyone wish to address the board regarding the adult education budget? Seeing none, close the public hearing. We're now ready for our action items. And we have 2 action items this evening which we could take as a consent agenda if we wish to. They are approval of the 2017 Urbana High School graduates. It's kind of already done, so I'll assume there's no objections to that one. And 10.02, agreement between the City of Urbana and the school district on the splash program. I don't believe that there would be any objections to that one either. This is a continuation of the same agreement, basically, that we've had for years. So if the board is willing, we can take this a consent agenda with one motion for both items.
That's fine with me. I just had a question about the second one, just a point of clarification, but not to hold up it won't change my vote.
Okay. So a motion to approve the consent agenda for items 10.01 and 10.02 would be in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is it a quick question?
Yeah, our partnership with the city and Splash, didn't that also include the Park District in just recent times?
So this particular resolution is something that for the last several years, Urbana School District has applied for a social service grant through the city to help extend the Splash funding. And the Splash grant, the 21st Century Grant, is part of a larger project that has partnership with the Park District.
Okay.
So I don't know if I explained that well, but basically the last several years, because of the uncertainty of federal money through the 21st Century Grant Program, we've applied for kind of a bridge grant from the city's social service program, and that's allowed us to continue Splash until funding comes through.
Got you. So
So
the Park
this is
District
a-
is still part of the
Park
total
District-
picture?
Very
Still
much,
involved in
very
it,
much.
But this is just the city portion.
Just the city, gotcha.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Are we ready for a vote? We're not spending money here, we're receiving money, so a voice vote would be in order. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We have 2 study topics this evening. First is the budget discussion. So, Carol?
Well, as you said, I think the theme tonight is let's wait and see, but I will go through what we know now. I provided a couple of things at your place, the budget assumptions that you're familiar with, and then the budget summary that shows the summary of the budget. And then in your board packets over the weekend, you received the actual detail budgets that I'm sure you all spent the holiday weekend going through with great detail and have lots of questions for me. But real quick, the budget assumptions, I'm just going to go over the highlights from that. The 2.1% is our CPI. So that's what we'll see in addition to what we're estimating at about $6 million in new construction. That's about half of what it was last year, but I'm being conservative and hopefully we will see the $6 million. More will be known probably in October when we do our levy. But hopefully that's a conservative estimate. I'm happy to say this is our final year of payment for the Carl settlement. So we'll make one final payment of $397,000 and you will not see this on the assumptions any longer after that. Under number 4, general state aid, as Don mentioned, the legislation being approved, the budget being approved came right as I was finishing my budget.
Speak up.
Came right as I was finishing my budget last week, so I put in the $163,000 into the state aid line. So more information is going to be coming out on that, but right now that's what we're assuming we're going to get, and we did add that into the budget in one line item. Otherwise, the other things that is new this year, food service, we have our breakfast in the classroom that you've heard about. That will obviously increase our breakfast participation at all levels and increase our revenues as well as our expenses. So those have been included in the budget. Replacement tax is going up about $110,000, so that's a small increase there. And as we talked about, funds number 10, beginning fund balances that you see on the summary. The beginning fund balances included over $6 million. That's the highest I think obviously it's ever been. The state was way behind this year. over $6 million that they've owed us. And that doesn't even account for some of the grants. Those are just the payments they had vouchered for that they haven't paid us. That doesn't account for, during the audit, we go through and actually look at what we'd spent that they haven't reimbursed us for yet, that we maybe haven't done an expenditure report for. So it will be even higher than that when we do the audit. So those amounts are added into the beginning fund balances here, so that we only include 1 year of revenues in the budget, for the budget that you're seeing on the orange form. As far as other highlights, number 14, salary increases you're familiar with, seen that before, 3.5% for licensed staff and an average of 4% for educational support. One bit of happy news, in addition to having a state budget, is that our federal TRS that we've talked about in the past at being close to 45-50%, it was going up this year, is down to 10.1. So they did get that passed through. So although we had done everything to this point to move all of the certificated staff out of the grants, we were pretty much avoiding that anyway. But there are a few subs and things that we do pay out of the title grants that not having to pay a 50% penalty on top of that. It's not a penalty, but it's 50% that we could obviously be spending on the classroom. So now we'll be able to do that. So that's great news. Otherwise, number 20, the district's portion of the indoor aquatic center loss, that bill has been sent and already paid in July of $216,000 for this year. And then on the last page,
So that's creeping back up again.
it creeped up a little bit this year, and we'll probably be coming to see you. We're talking about pool packs soon. So that will be something. Pool pack is the pool pack on top of the
Replacement.
roof, the replacement of the pool pack. So that's something that will be coming probably sometime this year to the board. We're looking at planning that rather than waiting
It's been 20 years.
for there to, well, we had the fire that we replaced it in '02. When was the fire? No, that's when it was built, '02. It was probably in, I can't remember.
6.
Oh, there it is, right there in my budget assumptions, '06.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's 11 years old. But we don't want to wait for it to go down and have the pool be down like it was with the fire and lose all of the swimmers. So we kind of want to have a planned replacement rather than have it go down and have it cause us to be shut down for a long time. So, but I'll be coming back with that in the future. And number 22, the budget this year does include the sale of the Yankee Ridge working cash bonds for the renovation and additions at Yankee Ridge for $11 million. And I'm estimating about $8 million of that is going to be in this fiscal year's budget, and the remainder when the job's completed in August of 2018. 23 just lists all of the working cash projects. The board has approved those in the past already on the agenda, so those are just listed there for budget purposes. And then the transportation fund, we still haven't heard about what our proration levels are going to be with transportation fund. They say they're going to be better. Right now, I'm including the prorations at what they were this past year, 71% for regular and 92% for special ed. So if it's better, then our transportation fund will end up looking better, which is a good thing. So if you go to the summary page, you can kind of see, I want to focus mostly on the middle, second and third columns, budgeted revenues and expenditures, and the current surplus or deficit. And you can see we look pretty good again. I mean, we ended up the year well. We have the state owing us a lot of money, but had the state paid us, and hoping that now we're hearing that the state probably will pay us, I've added that $6 million into these beginning fund balances. But the 2017-18 budget in the middle column summarized here, you can see we are $152,000 deficit in the ed fund, but as I've said before, that could swing one way or the other based on our tax receipts. So if I'm within $200,000 of being balanced, I think we're doing good, because it could go either way. O&M is still in deficit, and Matt and I are going to work together. We're already He's already looking at a lot of things and doing things to see where we can save some money, so we're hoping we're gonna be able to be balanced, and then we'll have to probably do something in the future to infuse some money into the O&M fund.
That's
to be
already a
able to-
smaller deficit than it has been
Yeah.
in years past, though.
I'm not sure there's anything. Anybody have any questions on this page? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, and most of the funds look pretty good. A lot of the things I've highlighted on the budget assumptions. So you see the 11 million going in on Fund 60 for the construction for Yankee Ridge, and the ending fund balance is.
So Carol, how long are we allowed to carry the IMRF fund at such a significant deficit?
You're allowed to do it. I mean, there's nothing that prevents you from doing it. What they don't like is for you to have a huge balance there, because then you're over levying and you could have objections for that. So it's one of the funds I'm watching along with transportation and O&M, but as you know, we've got that certain amount of, we've got our aggregate tax levy that we can kind of put in the funds. And as the board has told me in the past, they want to keep the education fund as balanced as possible, and the transportation and O&M are the ones that take the hit, so. IMRF has started to get some of that as well. But if I put more money, more tax levy into those, the education fund's gonna suffer, so. Yep. So any questions? There's gonna be a lot more information coming out. Like I said, this is all so fresh, as far as the funding. I will probably be making some tweaks, especially with the grants. The grants are not we don't have a lot of information right now on most of our grants. So I'll be trying to make some changes in that before the next board meeting, but on the 19th, I don't expect these numbers to change a whole lot. And if there's anything significantly different, I'll point that out to you on the 19th, but we'll have the final board approval on the business meeting in a couple weeks.
Any questions?
Can you just remind me, the 6 million that the state owes us, is that the general state aid? Or
No.
the mandated categoricals that they haven't?
It's some mandated, state aid's the only thing that they paid on, well, that was
They
even
did pay, I thought they paid
a little
on
bit
that.
late, but they
Yeah.
ended up making those payments.
So,
No, it's special ed funding, mandated categoricals, transportation,
okay.
all of the grants, orphanage money, lunch and breakfast. They were way behind on, national school lunch and state lunch and breakfast
Okay, so
payments.
So it's not any general state aid, that's all been, because I thought they
State
said
aid
in
is
the press they
caught up.
passed that on, but, and that's all from just last year?
Yeah,
Well,
yes.
yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? So this will be back before us for a vote on the 19th in 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right, our next study topic is a resolution in support of public education, which is an effort at the national level.
Yeah, I have a resolution in front of the board for a first read. I'd like to talk just a little bit about it and the history behind it, as well as my own involvement in the organization that is spearheading this work at the national level. The American Association of School Administrators, which is the School Superintendents Association nationally, is the organization that I was involved with this summer as part of the Know Yourself to Lead Yourself Leadership Academy that I went to in June. And if you remember, I briefed the board on this real briefly just before I left, and I was one of 35 superintendents from across the nation to be chosen for this leadership work. I became much more involved and engaged in AASA and a little bit more familiar with their work around issues of equity and leadership. One of the things that they launched later this summer in July was a I Love Public Education campaign. And this is a national campaign that's aimed to change the dialogue around public education in this country. As you're aware, it's been a number of years that public education has been criticized as failing, as not doing enough to keep us competitive with other countries. and as hurting our economy. AASA, along with a number of other organizations across the country, highly disagree with that narrative. And what the goal of this resolution and this work is to really change the dialogue locally and nationally about public education, to highlight the critical role that public schools play as the foundation of a civic society, the role that public schools play as the foundation of democracy, of innovation, and of economic development. And so, with that in mind, AASA is focusing on the importance of public schools as drivers of equity and educational opportunity for student achievement. They put out there on their website that equity is at the center of their campaign, and I'm quoting now, with the long-term goal of ensuring that all communities have access to high-quality public school. Our multi-pronged campaign will permeate all aspects of our work, from advocacy, public policy level, children's programs, leadership development, and member services, as we support, as well as the supports and services we provide to members and their school districts. This resolution that I have in front of the board is one that we adapted a little bit just to represent our own values and our own ideals here in Urbana. And so this is a first read. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions, I welcome those. And just for the sake of our viewing audience, it is a little lengthy, but I would like to read it through. It says, Urbana School District 116 supports and values an inclusive, safe, and innovative quality public education system that ensures that all students can succeed, regardless of their race, their native language, their gender, gender identity, their immigration status, their religion, their ability or disability, their social standing, or their zip code. And Urbana School District promotes equity and excellence for students, educators, and administrators by implementing continuous improvement and research-supported best practices. And Urbana School District 116 advocates for policies that address the unique needs of historically marginalized students and families. And Urbana School District 116 supports creating stable, equitable, predictable, and adequate funding for schools based on local, state, and federal revenues that will meet the challenges of universal proficiency and provide the funding base needed to support a system which leads to success for all students. And Urbana School District 116 supports the application of evidence-based public school accountability systems for all educational institutions receiving local, state, or federal funding, including but not limited to virtual schools, charter schools, independent schools, and homeschool placements. Urbana School District 116 supports public school regulations and accountability that should apply to all schools receiving public school funding. And Urbana School District 116 advocates for the highest quality public education for all students and develops and supports school leaders and educators. Whereas investing in public education is crucial to ensuring the future health of our economy and our country's global competitiveness, students must leave their public schools ready for success in the 21st century society and ready to fulfill current and future jobs. A robust state and federal investment in education is necessary to equip schools with the resources, personnel, facilities, and technology to position students to acquire the skills and knowledge needed for college and career success. And whereas without quality public education, there will exist a greater divide between the educated and uneducated, corresponding to the divide between the rich and the poor, and the strong and the weak. And whereas the existence of a strong, effective system of free public education for all children is essential to our democratic system of government, and whereas public schools provide students with broad-based educational opportunities, including learning multiple languages, having exposure to the history, culture, and context of all regions of the world, learning how to collaboratively solve problems and interact with peoples of different cultures and different lands, and developing an empathy for human differences, commonalities, backgrounds, and cultures. And where in investing in public education is critical to student health, public schools serve as a lifeline for children who can't access health services outside of school. Schools are uniquely positioned to help children and youth acquire lifelong health-promoting knowledge, skills, and behaviors. And whereas investment in public education matters, while the federal government contributes on average just over 10% of a school's district's operating budget, the federal funds provide critical support to schools and the neediest students they serve. And whereas getting children ready for democracy embraces the notion that to thrive, this nation must have citizens committed to the ideals and work of democracy, equipped to operate in democracy, and who can find common ground in their differences and respect where common ground is absent. And be it resolved that these statements exemplify the importance of enhancing educational opportunities for students. Therefore, the nation's public school superintendents call on local, state, federal lawmakers to prioritize support for strengthening our nation's public schools and empowering local education leaders to implement, manage, and lead school districts. Urbana School District 116 advocates for local, state, and federal policy that is committed to supporting and educating the whole child, providing support for academic and non-academic factors, including counseling, extra and co-curricular activities, and mental health supports. Urbana School District 116 joins AASA, the School Superintendents Association, in support of the I Love Public Education campaign, to tell the good news of public education, to engage in conversation related to ensuring that every community has access to a high-quality public school, and to support the leaders of our nation's public schools. Urbana School District 116 affirms its commitment to these values and will be steadfast in its efforts to protect students and their families, public schools, and our communities from any policies that would undermine these values. Urbana School District number 116 urges Congress to ensure federal resources are allocated equitably, providing increased levels of support for all communities and districts. You will notice that there are a number of people in the audience and a few people around the table who are wearing shirts that are advertising this campaign. I actually did an email speed raffle in the middle of the summer at around 10:30 at night, and the first 7 people to reply received shirts. And unfortunately, I'm wearing Chris Vowell's shirt, and I apologize profusely. My daughter actually stole it out of the box and put it on and wore it to school. And so it's been washed once, and I will wash it again before I give it to Chris. But I would also encourage you to think about ways that you as board members and we as a school district can support public education. Because I truly believe, as a parent of Urbana High School students and an Urbana High School graduate now, this truly is one of the best educational systems that I could offer my children. And I'm not just saying that as superintendent, I'm saying that as a proud parent. I applaud the work that you do as board members, and I know that you support public education. I'll take any questions that you have or comments about the wording.
Peggy?
Well, a question and a comment. One is, I'm sure you've been kind of tweaking this draft, because the one I have had different language in many places, so maybe you can make sure we get the most current draft so we can.
Yep, the one that was
Yeah.
emailed out was the original template.
Okay.
So
cool.
this one that you have in front of you is the latest version.
Okay. Well, no, the one I was reading off on was different from the one you were reading off of.
The one that was handed was at our place tonight when you came.
Oh, maybe
Oh,
maybe I
okay.
printed one out. Okay. That was with the agenda. Okay.
Yep.
Anyway, so I understand that this is a national campaign that the AASA is encouraging districts around the country to embark on. Are districts doing different things with the campaign, or is every district who's taking this campaign seriously doing a similar resolution? And
They're all tweaking their resolutions a little bit, and they're all approaching it a little differently. I actually reached out to our local UEA and IE leadership, and they were thrilled with the wording of the resolution. They said, I received an email from the union president today saying we support this 100%. It fits in very well with IEA's state initiative, which is called CAPE, which is, I want to get the wording exact because they have a website and a Twitter feed called I Am a CAPE Crusader. CAPE stands for Committee to Combat Attacks on Public Education. And they are producing a similar set of dialogue to kind of push back on some of the myths that are myths that are being told about public education.
Okay. So do you envision maybe if we adopt this as a district that some additional information would go on our website, might get passed on to parents on how they can support this campaign? I mean, various, suggestions on what they can do or students can do.
Very much so.
Okay.
I envision this being one of the efforts that we take to kind of tell our story.
Great.
And make it a more public story, not just on our website, but in other forms of social media, as well as the local media outlets as well.
Great. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Other questions? I just, on the whereas that involves student health, can you explain or expand upon why that whereas was included? The other things have to do with our core mission of education, and I know that the follow-on language has to do with education about health issues. But I just was curious as to why that was kind of pulled out.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, in Urbana, we have a school-based health center. We're not unique in that, but we are rare in that. And that support for literally student health through a school-based health center that is here as part of our school system it improves attendance. It is a major factor in supporting our students who struggle with mental health issues, who have other long-term kind of chronic health issues, as well as preventative medicine with dental health and immunizations. And that's one reason why I highlighted some of those things and made that language a little stronger than some districts would have. But it's also gets at the idea of educating the whole child, and the fact that public education needs to focus on educating students for a healthy life and a healthy lifestyle. And so education needs to be aimed at health education as well. And so that health education, for many of us in my generation and around the table here, health education was about, had units on nutrition and the body and sex education and all of those things. That is much more robust in today's curriculum, and that's just a nod to that.
Well, so I would suggest under the be it resolved that where you say extra and co-curricular activities and mental health supports, that there be physical and mental health supports to tie back into the whereas.
It's good. I appreciate that.
And then in terms of minor editing, the last and under the last whereas should be the word therefore. Therefore, be it resolved, rather
Yeah.
than
Yep.
and.
That's probably a cut and paste.
Yeah, understood. Understood. Okay. Any other questions on this matter?
That's a good idea.
I just think the timing is right on this because of what is said. It represents the population we're serving, because as you and Ruth Ann and I know, it's a different generation now. So getting your PTAs involved, getting community, I think this move is great because it is about the whole child. Because, I'm into the psychosocial, the cognitive development at an early stage, so this is very important. So I like, John, that you changed the wording on that, because this will open a lot of other people's eyes about even us, what we're doing in Urbana. So I agree, this is really great. I support it.
Right. Any other questions, comments? All right, so this will be back before us in 2 weeks for a vote.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you'd like to order a shirt, you can contact me.
Okay.
I think Lori sent it around to board members. If she didn't,
Some of, yeah.
oh,
Uh-huh.
So,
I think I know why. I can
so-
fix that
so
pretty
t-
quickly.
So take care of it tonight before you leave.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot easier than
Yeah,
trying to wade through
the link.
the link, because our computer expert had trouble with it, which means I would, well, if you got it to work after a lot of work, that means I would
It's not
never get
easy.
it
I-
to work.
I got it to work, but.
I know
don't
the
have it on.
problem, actually,
Yeah.
immediately, which is you were using your linked emails rather than a district login email, but
Yeah.
that's just a setting that I can change in that form.
Okay.
Okay. Good for you techies to know how to do that. My son is in the audience tonight, and he's getting a big grin out of that because he knows just exactly how incompetent I am when it comes to it. So,
Join the club,
It's
yeah.
actually done, so now you can get in and do
Oh,
it
okay,
now.
well,
I did already.
we'll just talk
Yeah,
afterwards.
just,
to take
you
care
can
of
just tell Lori.
Yeah.
All right, all right. We have no call for future special or executive meetings. We're ready to continue on with the agenda. We're ready for the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I just have one thing that I'd like to highlight, and I gave the board 2 copies of what are our draft documents right now. They will be coming out very shortly. The YMCA on the University of Illinois campus has spearheaded a welcoming center, and Lucia Maldonado and I serve on the advisory board of the Welcoming Center. And this September is a National Welcoming Week about welcoming immigrants, welcoming refugees, anyone into this community and in this country. I provide you with this information for 2 reasons. One is, I think it's important that we, in Urbana schools, as we celebrate our diverse community, and as we talk about removing barriers to equity, we consider our role as leaders in this community to making sure that this community stays a welcoming community. And the YMCA is, as I said, taken a leadership role in organizing some welcoming activities. And Welcoming Week is scheduled, as I said, let me see if I can get the date correct here. Welcoming Week is from the 15th through the 23rd of September. And you have, as I said, these are 2 draft documents, and so you'll get actual real ones after they've gone to the printer. But I pulled these off of the email that we were sent for review, and I thought I'd share them with you because there are a lot of activities that are happening around campus and around the community in that week period, as well as some things happening before. In fact, there are a few things that happened here in the school district. There was a back-to-school picnic over in Champaign last week. In August, there was a Meadowbrook Garden Pavilion. There was a back-to-school picnic, and then we also had a back-to-school picnic for the bilingual program last Wednesday, I believe. We also are hosting a number of things in the schools during that welcoming week. At the end of the week, on the 29th, you'll see that there's a parents versus teacher soccer game and potluck at Urbana High School and Urbana Middle School. If any members would like to participate in that game, I'm sure you are welcome to attend and participate. I will say, having played in one of them a couple years ago, it's a tough game of soccer and a lot of fun. But I wanted to share this with you because, as I said, I think that we, as leaders in this district and we as leaders in this community, need to be very cognizant of how our immigrant populations are feeling at this time. And when I say this time, I didn't know that the timing of this would be quite as profound as it is. But as many of you know, Today, the Trump administration has rescinded what's called the DREAM Act, or DACA, which many of our students and families have taken advantage of as pathways to citizenship for children who were brought here as infants, but because they weren't born here, they weren't naturalized citizens. Many of them did not know their immigration status, and DACA was the only way that they had access to jobs, to post-secondary education, and to become productive tax-paying members of our society, which they are. The repeal of DACA is concerning to me for a number of reasons, and I'd like to put on my history teacher hat for just a second. Because one of the things that I've stated many times over the last 2 years when I've been asked about immigration status of our students and families is that the school district cannot, by law, ask for or require students and families to present us with immigration status. That's federal law that has been codified or judicated. Thank you. I was trying to add an extra syllable in there. Adjudicated by the U.S. Supreme Court in Plyle versus Doe in 1982. And Plyle versus Doe was a landmark case that said that not only could school districts not ask for immigration status for students and families, but that the Texas law that it was based on was specifically unfair in that it targeted minors who had no knowledge, intention, or willfulness in breaking any state or federal law. And to me, that exemplifies what is happening to these young people who have been part of our society for many years and have taken advantage of a legal method through DACA of gaining access to opportunities in this country to become educational and economic drivers of this country, and then to have that taken away, in my mind, screams unconstitutional. And as a history teacher and someone who taught the U.S. Constitution and state constitution to my 8th grade students, I can tell you that I need to be in a classroom tomorrow to have students reading Plyle versus Doe. I want to make sure that all of our families understand that nothing is going to change in terms of the way Urbana School District handles students who have any varying degree of immigration status. You are all welcome here, and you will always be welcome here. And we will continue to protect your status, and we will never ask for it, and we will never reveal it to anyone, even if you tell us. Welcoming Week is in just a couple weeks. I think that it's important for this entire community to clearly make sure that our diverse and wonderful community understands that they are welcome here. And so again, I encourage you, the reason I gave you this information draft in advance is because Welcoming Week will be starting before the next board meeting. And so please take a look at your calendars, and I encourage you to participate. Thank you.
Let's hope the action of today finally forces Congress to act and do comprehensive immigration reform, which would have resolved the whole kit and caboodle from the get-go. So, any board reports this evening?
I got one. I'm gonna go September 20th. I gotta get in touch with, I see you have mental health listed here. I can't remember if they contacted me at the office or not, but I'll go on the 20th, and then are you going to email us the exact date of the welcome, because I'll go to that.
Yep.
I just want to tell everybody that Blossom Basket, I know the one in Urbana, but Champaign participates too, but they're offering a dozen roses. This is your neighbor's week. So if you bring a canned good to them at 7 in the morning to around 9, you can get a dozen roses and give it to someone to show that they mean something to you. And the canned goods goes to the homeless population to serve them. Yeah, I'll be there at 6:30. So if you want to come in, but Blossom Basket does so much for the schools too. I know all the kids go there prom time, and they just do a lot of community events, and they need to be recognized for what all they do.
That's good to know.
And their kids went through Urbana, didn't they? The prior owners, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
Benita, could you repeat what day they're going to be doing that?
We're
please?
doing it in the morning.
Like several days in a row?
No,
or
just one day, which is
Just
tomorrow
tomorrow, just
morning.
tomorrow, okay.
And you can go to either Blossom Basket, the one in Urbana or the
one in
one in Champaign.
It's called Good Neighbor Day.
One day, then it comes back again in February around that time. I'll let you all know. But they're beautiful, fresh, all different colors, dozen roses. So show somebody you care. It's called Good Neighbor. Get you a dozen roses, one canned good, or they take donations too. So, yeah,
Right.
do that.
Other board reports?
Real quick update on the solar project. Behind the scenes, we've been working on
Yeah.
getting the contract language done, as well as they did some more refined measurements on the amount of coverage we could get on King School. So we're getting the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and it's going to hopefully be before us in our next meeting.
Oh,
Thank you for that reminder, yeah.
okay.
Does anyone have an update on the Urbana soccer score?
3-1, Urbana varsity beat Uni, and the Urbana JV beat the Uni JV 3-0. So both teams won today.
Good. In case anybody doesn't understand, Uni High was rated number 2 in the county, and we were rated number 1 going into tonight's game, so that hopefully solidified our ranking. Our football team has some work to do, but our soccer team has got some work to do too, but whatever. All right. No further board reports. A motion to adjourn would be in order. Moved and seconded. I heard a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.